You have a much more professional setup than me. Look at that lovely office.
Where are you?
I'm in London.
Aha.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate talking to you. And I'm such a huge fan of the film that it's lovely for me
Oh,
to talk
that's
to you. Well, I'm a child of the '80s, so anything '80s related, it gets my juices flowing, as they say. And I remember seeing it when I was a kid in the cinema. So I just wanted to begin with kind of the impact that the film's had. I mean, obviously, at the time it was one of these kind of films that didn't have there was quite a few movies that didn't have a huge box office, but over time has become even bigger than some of the movies that did make a lot of money. So I just wondered how that has kind of sat with you over these years, that more and more audiences as time goes on have kind of embraced the film.
Well, I've had several films that have gone that route. Fly the Navigator, certainly. Also, I did a movie about surfing called North Shore, and that is now a cult film among surfers. I think there's hardly any surfers in the world who can't quote from that movie, quote some of the lines. So it's very nice because you get the support from fans later instead of right away. So I don't mind it. I think it's fun.
Yeah, very different to I can imagine the history of Greece, given that it was such a big.
Yeah, that was all the time, every time, every year, all the time. So it's great to have these two kinds of support from fans.
Yeah. Well, in my mind, it is still the greatest musical of all time, but that's just me.
It's very
So
big in England, I hear. Yeah, England, British people really love it.
huge. Yeah, my mum played Rizzo in her school play, so it's been in my family for a long time. That's why I love it so much. I think she played Rizzo when she was about 12, so a bit young to play Rizzo, obviously, but hey, she was, I guess, a bit mature for her age. In terms of I mean, I really enjoyed Lisa's documentary as well. It's really, really eye-opening. And I just wanted to ask you about the movie itself. I mean, obviously you've done Grease and everything else. So, and obviously this is a big sci-fi movie, which was a big, at the time, a lot of people were making these kind of sci-fi movies. But what made this one kind of stand out for you? Was it what you mentioned just before about, the kind of relationships between the brothers and the family and all that kind of stuff?
That was certainly one reason that I liked it, but I also always wanted to do special effects in a movie. And my brother Jeff does special effects for a career, and so he and I worked together on trying to find a way to make this project look different from the other sci-fi movies that were coming along. And we sort of, because he was involved in CGI, I was able to find a way to do the spaceship differently than it had been done before.
Yeah, because it was only when watching the documentary that my brain kicked into gear that the technology that you used was then used by, well, at least big enough in James Cameron in Terminator 2 a few years later. That kind of morphing, kind of steel-like movement, if you like, was kind of started by you guys.
That's right. And most of the time people didn't know that, when it came out and Terminator 2 was out and everything, we said, wait a minute, that's what he must have seen our movie. But nobody was talking about it until like just recently. So it's nice to see that has come back and come out.
Yeah. In terms of your other movies that you made before you made Flight of the Navigator, obviously Grease and a few of the others, how much of a challenge was this, or was the unique challenge of this given the other movies? I mean, was this the biggest movie that you worked on?
Well, yes, the challenges were not so much making the movie as dealing with the two entities that were funding it, because one wanted to make an action film with the government shooting down the spaceship, and the other wanted to make a family drama. And so I was in the middle of that, trying to please both entities. And in a way, I think I did. There's action in it, but mostly it's a family drama.
Yeah. And so, I mean, some of the effects and everything. I mean, watching the documentary of some of the behind the scenes stuff is incredible because, like, you built the inside of the spaceship for real. You did all those things for real, and those things kind of get lost in modern movies. You would just all do that as CGI, whereas you're one of those great '80s movies that does things physically, and it really adds another great element to the film.
Yes, I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. Some of the stuff, the effects in the wall and everything, were all done on camera. And yeah, I think people are trying to get back to that because there's so much CGI now that it's, to me, it's kind of like, some of these big Marvel shows. feel like a fire hose blowing in your face, a fire hose of visual effects. So that you're so overwhelmed by it that you get numb.
Yeah, a little bit. And I love that about, because obviously I was born in the 80s, so I watched a lot of these movies. The fact that they're so physical actually gives them such a great kind of uniqueness, and you develop such a great fondness for them because they feel like real. All the little creatures in the spaceship, and the eye that comes down, everything else. It feels like they're almost like your friends in some respects. They're like a real thing rather than a computer generated thing, which
Yes.
adds such a great element to the film.
Yeah, I guess today people just know everything's fake, and so they're not impressed by it. It's very sad.
Yeah, and let me ask you about casting Joey, because he's incredible in the movie, and he brings David to life in such a fantastic way. But I know that you guys, documentary, you obviously had quite a challenge to find the person. So I just wondered, for you personally, what convinced you about him when he first kind of auditioned back in 84, 85, whenever it was?
Well, we had seen so many people, and a lot of them were fine. They would have worked okay, but Joey came in and just was like a malleable kind of actor. I mean, you could give him something to do, and he'd do it immediately. Especially crying. When you have a sequence where a child has to cry, and if it takes them a while to do it, that's time that you can't afford, because you can only use those kids for 4 hours a day because of their age. So if you're having difficulty getting a scene where a kid cries and you're doing it over and over and over again, you're eating up the time, and it's for just in general, it's not good, but especially for children. But Joey could just turn it on like instantly. I mean, he's very easily, his emotions were very easily available. So that's what really convinced me, aside from the fact that he was really likable, that the fact that he could cry on cue.
Yeah, and I didn't know this when I was a kid, but over the years realized that part of the voice is Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, which I never knew when I was a kid, and I was so surprised. But I know that you kind of worked with him before, and he has that voice that you kind of know it's him, but also he adds such a great dimension to the film with his kind of his comedic sensibilities.
Yes, well, I knew Paul before that from, I guess, I don't know how I knew him, just socially, I guess. And we were having trouble finding an interesting voice for the spaceship. And then I thought, well, what about Paul? And I asked him, he said he'd do it. He didn't want to use his real name. I don't know why. He just wanted to have it be separate. And but then later we worked on Big Top Pee Wee. I directed that for him.
Yeah. There's some really cool things in the documentary as well that I love. Like, I always thought these stairs up to the spaceship, I always wondered how you did it, but actually you did it physically, and you did it in camera as well, which again, such a great 80s thing that all these things are in camera. I mean, but you spoke, I think you speak in the documentary about how difficult it was with finances to do things. So your way around it was to try and do as much as you could physically.
Right. And yes, because every shot would be about $30,000, every optical shot. And so by doing it in the camera, it just costs what it costs to set up the stairs. But when the stairs come down, when they become from the ship and they form, that was actually not CGI. That was done with stop motion. There were like hundreds of stairs that were in different shapes that they would put in and take out one by one, frame by frame, and that was a regular animation technique.
Yeah, it's incredible. And obviously, there's the thing they mentioned about that you use when the ship maneuvers outside the hangar. That's kind of an optical effect mixed with miniatures, mixed with other things.
Yes.
I mean, that level of craftsmanship, as you say, it kind of gets lost in these big movies now, because you could just do a computer and just do it, and there it is.
I was on my way to the set, and I was just thinking of how to make that moment where the spaceship comes out of the hangar, do it in the camera. And I remember Darby O'Gill and the Little People and how they did forced perspective. And so came up with an idea of using two mirrors and having the spaceship come out from behind one of the mirrors. And then there was a mirror that would reflect what was in front of the spaceship. So it was a series of mirrors, and the camera was set up. A lot of fun. just came up with that idea going there, and then I started saying, "Get me 2 mirrors," and everyone said, "What?" And they didn't think it was going to work, and I said, "Line it up like this," and then they said, "Wow, that really worked."
do you I mean, obviously that film was made in the 80s. Do you think this kind of movie, do you think you would direct this kind of movie now, given that it would probably be made much differently? Or do you like the fact that you made it when you made it, that you got to do all these things kind of in camera and to do it physically rather than just doing everything on a computer?
Well, I really enjoy technology and special effects, so I would love to do another sci-fi movie. I don't want to do remakes, but I'd like to do one using um, game engines and volumetric capture, which I've been experimenting in, because that's going to be the future of how really interesting movies are made, where you can like use the type of backgrounds you can find in a game, which can be really um, detailed and realistic, and then put actors into it.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you've been a director for many years. I mean, is it are you similar to a lot of other directors in the kind of sadness in that cinema, given obviously the situation, what's happening, that cinemas are closing and that the theatrical experience might change in the next couple of years? Are you still very much about the theatrical experience, or are you happy for people to consume how they feel comfortable?
Well, of course, I really love movie theaters where everyone can hear each other laughing and or screaming or whatever they do. So, I do find it very sad that a lot of us theaters are closing. I always felt that sad. Every time I would see a theater in a small town close and turn into a market or something like that, I'd always feel very sad. There was one in Haleiwa, Hawaii, where I spent a lot of time. Beautiful Art Deco theater that was ripped down and they made into a McDonald's, and it just made me very sick. I wanted to see if I could even raise money to save the theater, but there was no way monetarily to keep it going because people just were using at that time their VHSs, and so it's a slow downward trend, and now the COVID has really pushed that, and the streaming services have pushed that. So it's sad, but I guess going to the movies will now become like an event the way it was when it first started.
Yeah, absolutely. On the flip side of that, obviously, it's seen this massive boom in drive-in theaters, and I've seen both in the UK, in Australia, in the US, of people going to see Greece, still going to see Greece, paying tickets to go and see Greece, and having a good time. And even more so now, everyone needs a bit of a good time given what's happening. Does that still make you smile and shock you in some ways that people are still going to the cinema to see Greece?
Yes, I went. They asked me to do it. A clip for a drive-in show, so I did one, and then I went to watch it and saw it was very strange to see me up on the screen talking about Greece, and then the movie play, and then the drive-in scene. So it's very surreal, the whole experience.
Yeah. Have you heard about this Greece TV show that might be happening now? Do they
Yeah.
do they consult you on such things?
No, they'll just do it their way, and we'll see what happens. I'm much more interested in doing other stuff, new stuff. Well, but I have had two things I've done with looking back. One is the book I did, Grease Director's Notebook, which came out, and for HarperCollins. And the other is I used the song "You're the One That I Want" for a volumetrically captured music video for Intel, and so those were the two things I did that are fun. And that's going to come out on an iPhone app where you can have all the dancers dancing on the table uh, and doing that number.
Oh wow. I really enjoyed was it Vanity Fair? You did the scene breakdown or something
Right.
like that. I love you said about the thing you had to put up to stop the sun, or the reflection or something during the final number, which I love all that stuff. I never knew that you go to so much trouble to and then the insert shots in the funfair thing that you put in, it's incredible. I love all that stuff. It's incredible. Just as a final question before I let you go, obviously Flight of the Navigator, it's coming out on Blu-ray again. The documentary is coming out. It's now on Disney Plus all the way around the world. Does it give you a sense of pride and make you smile that new generations are able to watch it, and that it's there kind of for people to discover still, even though they may not have seen it, and even people who are young now are seeing it and still enjoying it.
Well, absolutely, because the story is what really makes people love the film, because it's all about a family and about relationships and love in a family. So yeah, the spaceship stuff is fun, and the character of Max is amusing, but really it's the story of the brothers coming together, the family coming together, and that always works. That doesn't change.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love the movie, so yeah, it's lovely to have spoken to you about it, because it's one of my.
Well, thanks. And the Joey Cramer's life has been such a whirlwind, and our documentary Life After the Navigator really is uplifting, because it shows how he went through a horrible time. His father told him to kill himself. He got into drugs. He wanted to get off them. He couldn't find a place to get off them. The only place was a prison. So he robbed a bank so he could get into prison to get off drugs, and it worked. And now he's out, and we're all hoping that he's going to do really well.
Randal, thank you so much for your time. Absolute pleasure, and stay safe with all the craziness.
Very good, Scott. Thank you for the interview.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey